Michael, it feels like forever since I've seen your face, brother. How's it going?
Oh, not bad. I've been around.
That's awesome.
How are you keeping?
Always good, brother. Always good.
That's good to hear.
Trying to avoid all the viruses the kids are bringing home from daycare after the holidays.
I keep a regular stock of Redoxon for when I visit my nephews, just in case, because it's good to up the vitamin C just in case to keep you on the healthy side.
All right, we'll get started in probably, I'd say 3 minutes. We want to actually keep this going and give as much value as possible in the short time that we have. It's not every day we have amazing speakers like Armenak, Janisha, and Yasmin on one call. So we want to take full advantage of it. We appreciate you all that were able to come right on time. So maybe we can start in about 3 minutes. Feel free to use the chat. We have our friend Ash here who's going to keep the chat active. She's really great at putting in any links. If you have any questions, if you want them to be anonymous, feel free to send them directly to Ash, and then she will not read out who sent them. Otherwise, just feel free to ask your questions in the chat. The first 55 minutes will be just discussion topics, panel discussions. We may break it up into some Q&A, and then for sure the last half an hour is just going to be Q&A. We're going to answer all your questions as best as possible. Awesome. So let's get started. I'll just go in the direction of me. We have Armenak, we have Yasmin, and we have Janisha, all-star lineup. Obviously, with the mass amount of layoffs that have happened in the last few months, we're hearing even more now coming out of Meta, more coming out of crypto.com, and just even every organization is being impacted if you're in the tech sector. I just saw Clearbank, I think it was yesterday, or Clearco let go 25% of their staff. So we wanted to pop up an event that was able to help those, especially those in crypto compliance, whether you're new to the industry or whether you've been affected by these layoffs. We really wanted to give as much value as possible. And we're hoping that we can do these events at least every other Wednesday so that people have a place that they can come to, learn. We'll be bringing in recruiters from the companies that are still actively hiring. And we're hoping that more and more people will get some insights that they can take back to their job search. Just a little bit about me. Steven Sargeant. I worked at Bitfinex for 4.5 years as a consultant. I branched off into several things, including recruitment, as well as creating my own content production house, which is what I do now. But I have about 4.5 years experience working in blockchain investigations, working with Interpol, FinCEN, FinTrail on several working groups. So I have a pretty vast knowledge about the industry and also about what candidates need to stand out of the crowd, even in situations like this. What you're probably going to realize about me is I'm very honest and upfront and try to be as transparent as possible, which means I'm probably not going to hold any punches when I make comments. So if you're easily offended, don't worry, I think you'll get over it. And then we're going to go to our next panelist. Armenak, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what you do, something that you do on your day-to-day role.
Hello, everyone. I'm Armenak. So, sorry, I just had a notification on my laptop. So I am in the crypto space since 2016, and I was prior to my current role, I was a co-founder in a crypto payment company that we founded with some other people in Austria, Europe. And so, yeah, fast forwarding, last year in October, I started in a crypto exchange. And so, yeah, that was basically my first contact with like real compliance. I had like basic KYC AML knowledge, but like real compliance and crypto compliance was my first step in. And I was fortunate enough to have great colleagues and great mentors that taught me everything. So yeah, fast forwarding now, like it's 1 year and 2-3 months now. And what I do on a day-to-day basis is basically on-chain investigations, alert investigations, and drafting and writing SAR, STRs. So that's my daily work. And what I also do, like, that's a bit of a bonus in my work, is we have like an incident response team where we, let's say, investigate on major incidents in the industry or hacks. So yeah, if our entity has any kind of risk exposure to these kind of hacks, incidents. Yeah, that's what I do.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And Janisha, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you're doing on a day-to-day time now.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello, family. It's not every day that we get together to what we call support each other. And Stephen, thank you so much for putting this together. As some of you know, I am an ex-crack knight where I did AML investigations, and it's just so great to see some of my former colleagues here, you know, which truly feels like a family coming together, reunion. So I did AML investigations and specialized in crypto fraud and theft. And before that, I worked at Scotiabank where I did some fraud deterrence. But really the reason I'm here is not because I'm a good speaker, as Stephen incorrectly said. I'm here because I am great at making a fool of myself. So before I was in banking, I was an executive brand consultant. And the reason I did that is because before that, I had a hard time getting a job that I considered fun and exciting. So I implemented a lot of strategies, unconventional ones, like walking into the headquarters at Rogers in Toronto and being kicked out by security, all of that stuff, until I found what actually works in a very human and authentic way. And when I understood what AML is, I became absolutely obsessed with it and used the same strategies to find myself a position several times. So I'm hoping to share just a few things that might be helpful. Thank you.
I'm sure they will. I'm looking forward to that part as well. Yasmin, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a couple things that you do on your day-to-day operations.
So, excuse me. I started out in the AML Canadian banking industry, became a consultant, and then started out at Tether 4 years ago as an analyst, and now I'm the onboarding investigations manager. So what I do is I kind of manage the onboarding stream, the investigation stream, and a few other things my team is responsible for doing. And that's it.
That's awesome. We're actually going to start with you, Yasmin. You know, everyone knows that the time right now is a lot about layoffs, a lot about, you know, instability within the crypto market. How do you view the market from your perspective? Do you feel it's harder for people to get jobs now because the market is filled with a lot more qualified professionals? How do you see it from a hiring manager? Are you getting great candidates? Give us a little bit of perspective of how you're viewing the current market.
We are definitely getting a lot more highly qualified candidates than when we hired in previous markets. That just, it doesn't mean that your qualifications don't matter. It just means that if you are able to bring across your knowledge of the industry, the economics of the industry, if you show your potential employer what you know about their company and what their standing within the industry is and what services they provide, they're more likely going to be interested in you as a candidate, as opposed to someone applying blindly for a job and not knowing who the employer is. So that will really help your chances of getting an interview. I think companies that hire responsibly, they haven't stopped giving promotions and raises, and they haven't stopped hiring. So do your due diligence on the company you're applying for, because if you're a victim of a layoff or you saw your colleagues getting laid off, you don't want to potentially become a victim of that again.
Awesome. And, you know, for people, I think the company's names built in had a list of like the top 100 companies to work for. I know Chainalysis was on the list, but also companies like Reddit, where you know, they're coming up with their own NFT platform or NFT options. You kind of have to beat people to where the jobs are going to be and kind of reach out to some of these companies that may not have compliance or trust and safety or fraud functions yet. But if they're getting into like an NFT marketplace, they're definitely going to have to get those skilled professionals in those areas. So built in would be a great place just to see who are the 100 companies, which one of those are fintechs and crypto. They're already being named as a great place to work. as Yasmin said, probably best to maybe see if there's open positions now, or at least start making those connections when they do open up some positions. Ash, this is why you're the best. Thanks so much for putting that in the chat. Janisha, as someone that, you've worked at a crypto exchange, you've worked at a traditional bank, you're so used to getting through the door in unconventional ways, and then being caught in the impact of a mass layoff. Tell us from your perspective, how do you view the market? Has the interview processes been harder? Has it been more difficult to use some of those maybe unorthodox strategies I've worked in the past right now?
That's a good question. Now, more than ever, I think is the time to be a little unconventional. As Yasmin pointed out, just blindly applying to a position may not render the results that we used to get 2 years ago when the market wasn't so competitive. I remember back when I took the chain analysis certifications, I was one of the first few people in Toronto who had actually completed a certification before getting a job. And so I was getting calls from crypto FIU managers, right? Without really asking, without really applying. Now that is not the case anymore. So what I'm finding, and I'd like to say my approach doesn't really involve applying to jobs. I like to think of applying or working as almost like a courtship. So I like to fall in love with the company and the team. And if I genuinely believe I have value to offer and take, then I spend a lot of time, I'd say at least 30 hours preparing for my first call, which I think we could talk about that a bit later, but the approach involves asking for a call instead of waiting for somebody to find you in their inbox. What I'm finding is, while it may be easy to initiate these conversations, I think there is a lot of noise for recruiters and hiring managers. So it's maybe a bit more difficult to create a consistent relationship. And that's where we have to work harder and maybe even try and, treat this as a numbers game.
I love that. And I think we have to kind of like put that as like a placeholder, the 30 hours worth of preparation, because people are going to hear what you said. They may try some of your tactics and strategy, but it really lies in that 30 hours of preparation. It's really easy to ask for a conversation when you've done that prep work with the company and you know exactly what their pain points are, exactly what their vision, what their ethos is. It's super easy to get a call when you've done that prep work. Whereas I see some people are preparing maybe 1-2 hours for an interview, not even just a first call, for an interview. Me and Alex Cote, who some of you already know, we always talk about, we feel for every hour that you're studying for preparation to the interview, it usually leads to another $1,000 of compensation. And I firmly believe that, but I just don't feel that people are willing to put in that much work, because there's no guarantee that they're going to get through. And that's why you're one of the few people that are able to get those calls, is because you're able to put in those 30 hours of work. What do you say to somebody say, well, that's a waste of time. You spent 30 hours applying to this job or reaching out to the company. It doesn't work out. What do you say to that? Like, how do you value your time in that sense?
Well, first of all, I'd like to caveat my own advice. This doesn't work for somebody who really desperately needs a job. And so I recognize my own privilege today, to have no dependents, to have some sort of financial security. And I do think if you are somebody who has bills to pay next week, maybe this strategy works once you find yourself in a little bit of a security, a more secure position. So what do I say to those who don't get results? I think that the result is not the job. That is not the ultimate outcome. I think this is very much like trying to find the right partner, right, to spend your time with. And so whatever I learn about the industry and the company is the true result that I'm after, because the whole process is about me trying to demonstrate to myself, most importantly to myself, and then to the hiring manager, that I am the solution that they're looking for. And so if I'm not the solution for this particular company, it may be the next company, but the skills that I've acquired are indispensable.
I think people should be taking notes. This is how I've lived my whole career, and I firmly believe it. And I love that you put that caveat. Yeah, if you're looking for a job tomorrow, this is a very long-term strategy. It's not going to work with 100% of companies, but when you're really only looking to work with 10% of companies, all you need is those 10% of companies to see value in what you're doing. This is not a great thing if you're trying to just mass apply for jobs. So great caveat. Armenak, to you, you've probably worked with an organization that's been affected by some of these layoffs where you still have your job. What do you see from the perspective? Are you taking on a lot more work now that maybe some of the staff is gone? Or how do you see the market now? Is it the same? Because you've transitioned into crypto compliance pretty quickly. So what do you see now that this might be your first bear market from a crypto compliance standpoint?
Yeah, that's true. From a private perspective, it's already the third, but from a crypto compliance perspective, it's the first. That's true. So of course it was very, let's say, sad, that seeing all these people that had to leave, that was like really unfortunate. And I was fortunate enough to not be, let's say, affected in this situation. And like naturally speaking, of course, there is some work that has to be taken over. Like it's just a normal consequence. But still, we are managing internally in a very good way. So what I do think in general, currently it's a tough period in general, and it's not just crypto, as you guys mentioned before. It's like literally everywhere, and to me it seems more like actually almost like a joke. People, companies taking this like as a trend, just to do some mass layoffs just because everybody else does it. Like I don't know, that's what it seems to me, which is of course like very saddening because there are like literally thousands of jobs or literally thousands of people that are without jobs. And yeah, but I think it's good for the companies that are still hiring. There are a few out there. And then it's up to what Janisha said, doing your own research. And yeah, what I also want to add is I think a key factor in all of this, and that's why it's great that we have a call like this, the connections that you have. I think it's very important to build a network, and it's not just about now or whatever. It's like really, this is something that you should have started already yesterday, and and if it's not yesterday, it should be today, the first day. So really, try to connect with as much people as you can, because that will be one of the main factors, let's say, while getting maybe a job, because having the right people in the right place could be already a big factor. Will maybe help you get an interview, will maybe help you, to get the job. So you never know. I think networking is really key.
It's probably the most important thing. And you have to really think, there's only so many exchanges that are hiring at mass capacity. Even some of the ones that are laying off, they were always hiring at mass capacity. You don't really need that many people to network with. A lot of the jobs before they even reach LinkedIn have gone through people like myself or other trusted people in the industry, where they're asking, and probably actually you, Armenak, you're working, people want to know, do you know anyone that works like you that wants to join us, right? That's usually the first way you build your team. I know Yasmin, they're probably asking you, hey, Yasmin, do you know anyone, before we have to post this and go through 1,000 applicants where 99% of people are not even qualified? Do you know any friends, family, or coworkers that might be willing to join the team? So it's so important to have a legitimate network that you can rely upon. Caveat there is that if you don't really want to connect with people, or if you're just trying to connect with them to get a job, people can usually sniff that out pretty easily. So it's just best, I'd rather not connect with somebody than to connect with somebody, and within the first, couple exchanges of conversation, I'm asking them about a job or opportunities. The trick is, and I think Janisha said this perfectly, look for opportunities, not so much looking for the job. Yasmin, to you, I would love to know, as a hiring manager, someone involved in the hiring process, what are some of the things that candidates are doing right, or what are some of the things, like, give me the turn-ons and turn-offs really quickly of what something. And I think it's important to be blatantly honest, because I think this is the issue with recruitment. Recruiters don't want to say, hey, you sucked at this is what you should improve. But I think this is a safe space where, hey, if people are desperately looking for a job, we need to tell them what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong from your perspective. Everyone has a different perspective, but we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, but before I answer that, I'll go back to LinkedIn. as a hiring manager, I get maybe dozens of friend requests on LinkedIn a week, right? It's hard for anyone to keep that many people in mind. I get occasionally the not cold calls, but like the messages, hi, are you guys hiring right now? Can you keep me in mind if you are? The ones that were successful in getting me to go and look for their application when we did start hiring were the ones that over the long term were following up or just saying, hey, how's it going? I wonder if you guys are hiring now. When you've done that for a couple of months, and I'm automatically going to remember your name for when I am looking for someone, because you're showing me that you're really interested in my company, or Tether is one of the few companies that you're genuinely interested in working for, and you're not just you're not just playing a numbers game and copy pasting the same text to 100 employers and then you know, not really having a passion for one company or one type of role. This seems obvious, but a lot of people do their interviews. I mean, I know the crypto industry is a little bit culturally different. It's not always as formal as banking, but if you're doing your first interview or your first impression is you're really super casual with how you're dressed, how you're talking, you're wearing like a, you know, just really, really casual clothing, you're laid back in your seat. You seem like you're really bored when you're talking, you know, like posture, how you're dressed, how you speak about yourself is really, really important as a first impression. And what else?
I actually want to, can I interrupt you? When you say how you speak about yourself, can you elaborate on that? Because I think that's super interesting. What I've noticed when I talk to people, the first thing they say is all the things they can't do, all the things they haven't done. They always start off with a negative. And I find that super interesting. And it actually it loses the confidence of the entire interview. So when you mentioned that, that clicked for me. What do you mean by that, Yasmin?
Yes, if you're not confident in yourself, it's hard to convince the person in front of you to be confident in you. Like as a human being, like consciously, I might think, okay, maybe this person is self-critical and doesn't mean they're a bad employee. But like if I'm doing an interview, if I'm not confident in myself, I can't convince you that you should be confident in me, and I can't expect you to make that bet in me if I'm not confident in myself.
I think you bring up a good point, is that like, although we would wish that hiring managers don't have a bias or don't have they shouldn't have that perspective. You should, the person might be nervous. The reality is that you're getting so many qualified applicants. These are things that could be deal breakers in the interview process, just because if another person doesn't do it, it really leaves you as kind of the isolated person. Janisha, talk to me about, we have a lot of the diversity on the call. Talk to me about being a woman of color, being confident on interview, dressing up the way you do, always showing up as kind of your higher self. How can people like ingrain that so everything they do, they kind of show up like that?
It's beautiful the way you see me. And that's what we are talking about, right? The way you see me showing up as my higher self is probably not the way I see myself. But I wanted to go back to the previous question really quickly. When we said, how do we talk about ourselves? I think the only antidote to our own imposters is being overly prepared, right? So what's my imposter? What's causing my imposter in most of the situations for me is that I don't know enough because I'm new to the industry, because I'm a woman, I'm not that technical. And so if you could figure out what is your alter ego or your imposter or whatever gremlin in your head is saying, then maybe you could be prepared to address exactly that concern. And so when I talk about the 30 hours of preparation, it's basically to say, I know everything that may come up in an interview. I have a list of at least 10 questions I want to ask these people to demonstrate that I've thought about this, that I've thought about all the problems that may emerge. And that's why I am an A player. Now, A player is a funny word, but back when I was in sales, those kind of words mattered. So if I asked an interviewer, can you describe an A player? They were very impressed. This is not a word that may be impressive in our industry, but maybe you need to demonstrate to yourself that you're an effective investigative, somebody with a detective mindset. So how do you do that? You just demonstrate. And then in terms of showing up as my higher self, I think all of these things are exactly what I thought I was rejected for in the past when I was an immigrant. And I thought I had a funny accent and I thought I didn't fit in. And that's when I realized that if I feel that I genuinely belong somewhere, then I likely will present myself as somebody who does. And so this is exactly how I feel I need to present myself, whether it's overdressed, whether it's like I'm going to an orchestra or something, but this is how I'm going to show up, because that's what I need to shut down my imposter. So whatever it is that you need.
You know, it's funny, and I think a lot of people on the call is like, oh yeah, this is simple stuff. Be confident, prepare. But I think people aren't doing that. The reality is I've interviewed almost hundreds of people now. People are not doing that. And I think it shows. I don't think people actually, to be quite honest, I don't think a lot of people are thinking throughout they're not prepared to think in the interview process. And it shows during the interviews that, hey, this person didn't prepare. And as you said, the preparation is not just about the company, it's about the industry. And those 10 thoughtful questions seem like, oh my God, but those 30 hours of research, you're gonna have a lot of the questions to ask them. And that's why it's so important. Armenak, she talked about detective thinking, critical thinking. You were in crypto since I believe about 2015, 2016, but you transitioned into compliance, which is always difficult. It's always tricky to teach people how to be a critical thinker when they don't really come from that investigation, criminology, maybe in school background. Tell us how you were able to kind of take those skills and learn them so fast to be a better compliance professional.
Sure. If it's okay, before I get to that, I just wanted to add really quick something on Janisha's comment as well, because I think it's a very important topic. In general, like what you say to yourself and about yourself is very important. First of all, for yourself and also for the person in front of you. So it's very important to be confident, but this is always a thin line between confidence and arrogance. So, you know, it's good to be confident. It's good to say, I think that I'm good in this and that, but of course, like, don't say, hey, I'm the best in this and that. You know what I mean? It's always like the tonality. So I think that's a very important point that Janisha touched on. Coming to your question, in general, like, even though I wasn't, prior to my current experience, even though I wasn't an investigator, I was always a very curious person. So if I didn't know something, I was always that person that was like researching as much as I can on the web and whatever. Same with crypto. When I heard about crypto, I was like, what is this? Like, I didn't know anything. Like most of the people, I was like very skeptical. I didn't know anything. But what I did was, since 2016, of course, at that point, it wasn't so, let's say there wasn't so much content as now, but now you literally can just go on, I wouldn't even say Google anymore. I just go into YouTube. I literally just type in how to, and then whatever I want to search for. And it's like easiest way. A specific example, for example, like was in the beginning of 2021 when this DeFi hype and everything happened, mostly with this, let's say, meme coins and everything. I didn't know anything about DeFi, but what I did was, like, I had time and I said, okay, hey, I want to know more about DeFi. So I went into Google, YouTube, I said, what is DeFi? And YouTube explained it to me. And I came to different projects, I invested a bit of money, and that's the next thing. If you do things, that's the best way and the fastest way to learn it. Because it's good, you know, to hear about things, to speak about things, but when you actually do it, it's the easiest way and the fastest way to learn. You will see all challenges immediately, you will like all difficulties, and yeah. When I started with my job last year, again, as I said before, I was fortunate enough to have great trainers, great colleagues that were always like ready to help me whenever I had a question. But I think there are two factors to that. First, how you are as a person. If you are, as you said already, if you are a curious person, investigative mind, this of course like helps a lot. This is like somehow the foundation. But then on the other hand, how supportive is your entity, or how supportive are your colleagues? And like, again, I had the luck that both of these things are, let's say, all together and work very well. So that's the reason why I was able to progress in that speed and in that way that I did. But again, it's like mostly due to my colleagues and their help.
And we know some of your colleagues, and we won't mention them, but we definitely know some of your colleagues, and they're some of the best. Janisha, I want to go to you. Many people on this call are out of work right now, and you found yourself in a position, same position. Walk us through the process, right? I know there's the initial, you feel rejected. It was you let go, not the person beside you. Walk us through all the feels and how do you deal with them, and then how do you move forward now that you're kind of back on the market?
I take it I have permission to get philosophical here.
Of course, this question was built for you too.
So this is a mentally laborious and painful process, right, my friends? There is abandonment, fear, rejection. It's basically all of the same symptoms of a heartbreak or loss. So what I found, what helped, and this could have helped in hindsight, but this could help in the future. I had been preparing to be fired since the day I got the job. And that's because a couple of years ago, I really became a stoic and it changed my life. And because the whole job was too good to be true, it was everything I wanted, leaving traditional finance. I wanted to be a nomad. I wanted to do work that directly impacts the world. And I wanted to be a part of a beautiful culture where people were just themselves and real, and where I could approach my CEO any day and, make a suggestion. I had all of that, which means it was too good to be true. And so I was imagining I would be fired one day because it was too good to be true. And so the day it happened, it wasn't a shock. It was just something I prepared myself for. However, as they say, grief has its own way, right, of showing up. And so grief showed up for me at different stages, as it might have for you. Mind you, I am in a very lucky position. Again, I don't have dependents, so it's much more comfortable. But one day on the dance floor, as some of you know, I'm a dancer. I am completely happy and immersed in my dance, and I pull off this beautiful Brazilian zouk move to a very different tempo. And that's when it hits me. I won't be able to share this fantastic news with my colleague, with whom I shared like 500 letter emails, Slack messages every morning. And that's when it hit me, like the most important aspect of that job to me was the people, right? Was being completely aligned philosophically and emotionally and ethically with the people I work with. And so I'd like to say I trust and I appreciate that this is a very human experience, and I love that I got to have this experience at this stage, but it may be more difficult for some people, and I truly empathize. I just want to say, maybe this is happening for you. This is not happening to you. This is happening for you. So the next time you have your dream job, you're preparing for it every day, both financially and emotionally.
I've never actually heard somebody years after it happens anyway saying, oh my God, getting fired was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. At the time, yeah, but never years. The only thing I ever hear is getting fired was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And Yasmin, talk to you, you've been at Tether for a long time. You're obviously growing there, your experience. Do you see all these other magical shiny ball projects going on? How do you handle, working in that environment, staying with the same company for a long time and still, fostering your growth and not feeling like you're stagnant or, plateauing in your career?
I think it's
deep question.
I love the crypto industry, not just because I can work remotely and all that, the other benefits, but there's a good culture happening where a lot of employers in the crypto industry, actually your manager's gonna encourage you to grow. And even if that means they're gonna lose you to another department, if that's the direction you want to head, they'll actually support that a lot. And And I know if I ever wanted to do that, my managers will promote it. I've actually hired from other departments from Bitfinex, where their interests were in AML and they wanted to transition from a customer support role or a similar role into AML. And those people, what they did in their role is, as a customer support person, they really went above and beyond their role to showcase their AML risk analysis skills. And so when they did ask for that transition, me and their CCO, Leo, were actually happy to have them potentially transfer over. So I think that culture is very much in a lot of crypto companies. And I'll never leave Tether probably for that reason. Yeah.
Tell us, you've been in the banking. Most people transitioning into crypto compliance or AML, maybe except for Armenak, have worked in the traditional banking sector. Tell us about some of the challenges going from traditional banking or financial institutions into crypto, and tell us some of the skills that were kind of easy that people aren't thinking about. Because I think the one thing many professionals have is when they're coming from traditional, they don't know the transferable skills to get into crypto. So they don't know to highlight that in the interview process. So tell me a little bit about some of the hardships and some of the wins or successes that you had in transitioning from traditional to crypto compliance.
One big thing that banking or traditional compliance teaches someone is structure and discipline and being able to work efficiently. Whereas a more laid back, smaller, startup may not, will have other benefits and you'll learn other types of skills, but you won't learn those skills as intensively as you would at a bank. So people from compliance coming in from banks already have that, and it makes them very, very successful in their crypto compliance roles. It is harder now to transition from banks to crypto just because there's a lot more people in the industry that have already crypto and AML banking background, not just AML banking. So again, it comes down to you showcasing your knowledge and maybe doing some of the things Armenak mentioned, going above, like on your own, doing that research, being passionate about it, teaching yourself other skills, and that will really show in an interview.
Awesome. How many people do you say, percentage wise, how many interviews have you been around? At least 100, 50 to 100 interviews?
Maybe 150, 200.
How many people show those skills that you're looking for, that you're talking about? They did their own research, they have a good understanding of the industry, and they're able to talk directly to how the industry, things are impacting, the industry will impact Tether. Because Tether is a stable coin, right? They have a little bit set of differences. How many people were able to display that? If you were to give a percentage, how many people were able to display some of those skills that you were looking for as a hiring manager or somebody as part of the hiring process?
It's very, very occasional, maybe not more than 5% for sure.
And I'm hoping that the people on the call really realize that, because I think we don't know, right? As a candidate, you think you're doing well in your own little hub. You only know the experience of you and the interviewer. As someone that's interviewed a lot of people, you see everyone in the industry. And the issue I see in this industry is that recruiters aren't making content. Maybe because they don't want to offend the clients by saying, hey, you're not doing this or this right. I have no problem doing it. But I think, and this is why I'm very transparent about it, because I think when you're only seeing 5% and basically they're giving you the exact skills, the exact planning and research that you need, it's really not that hard to stand out from the rest of the candidates as long as you're willing to put in the work.
Because you have to know, well, you're applying for something where the benefits are you're working 100% remotely. Your manager may never meet you in person. That also means that your future employer has to have a lot of trust in you, and that they're not gonna, you're gonna potentially have customer data on your laptop. They're gonna invest a lot of time in you to train you, especially if they have to train you on crypto, not just the specifics of your role. So trust is a big thing. And if you're one of those 5% of people that can show those skills, we actually weigh that really, really heavily, almost as equally as we weigh your experience on your resume.
And that's what I love. And people think it's all about, that they were a manager or that they did 7 years of crypto or it's really, I really think those everyone has those skills going into the interview. Otherwise, that you probably wouldn't be interviewing, right, Yasmin? So I think people don't realize it's the X factor that you have complete control of. And there's always going to be reasons why even if you do have that, maybe you're not on the right time zone. So don't get discouraged. Even if you present the 30 hours and do all the things, that you don't get the job, because there's also reasons why, you know, certain companies are looking for certain people in certain jurisdictions or time zones. Janisha, what are some of the things that you're doing to get interviews with people? You kind of gave us the 30 hours of prep. What are some of that, like, how do you approach these people? What are the messages that you're sending them on LinkedIn or maybe off LinkedIn? Are you reaching out to these people at in-person events? Tell us a little bit about your strategy, especially during the pandemic.
Sorry, I was just trying to open up a message that I could read to you that I might have sent to a recruiter in the past. But just one thing I wanted to say really quickly, you know, everyone's heard of personal branding and brand positioning and brand visibility. I am saying I'm against all of that, but I am pro branding. So what I'm talking about is doing all these things to qualify yourself and qualify your hiring, the company that you want to work at. And the only way to do that is to prepare, right? So maybe I could talk about the details a bit later, but first the approach is to understand that the process is not the same for every experience, for every scenario. For example, applying to a big bank or even a big crypto exchange, you know, you are asked to apply and then a recruiter may approach you. So what are some skills, OSINT skills you could use to figure out who the recruiter might be, who the FIU manager might be? And Michael is very curious about this. What can you do to directly contact the FIU manager to maybe get an information call? And I can't say much, but I will say that is how I got my job at Kraken. I had applied, of course, I had somebody who would have referred me, but first I wanted to understand what kind of people I might be working for, and if I can establish some sort of a connection, not contact, but connection with the one of the managers. And I had reached out to them, and I think that the message, the approach is what matters. And so I'd researched the company. I used a specific term, which is Krakenite, and in my message I said, look, I just know you're hiring, and I want to ask you, I just want to say three things. I think Krakenite is a beautiful term. Number two, I love that you do this. And number three, I'm completely obsessed with Chainalysis because I realized they need people who have the certification. And I only realized that because I knew they were training people who were working there, which means if I'd already had the certification, I was already more than qualified. And I asked for an information call. Did this approach get me a call? No, not right away. They said they were only hiring for a particular jurisdiction. So that was not directly a no, right? And so I said, that's okay. I don't want a job. I just want a call because I'm obsessed with a Kraken. Kraken is my North Star, and I just want to understand how I might be able to contribute to the team at some point. And sure enough, I did get a call, and sure enough, we connected. And I think that's the other thing. I wasn't trying to get a job, honestly. I was only trying to understand what made Kraken so fun to work at. And we did connect over so many things and our shared passion for anti-human trafficking. And that was a manager who wanted, who essentially wanted to hire me. So that kind of changes the process for you. And I'd say I've tried the same approach even for getting into Scotiabank, which is also a very competitive place if you're an AML fraud. And, you know, I think the approach, like the people you contact may be different, but the process, the formula is the same, which is you truly want to understand who these people are and what kind of problems they're trying to solve. And of course, genuinely asking yourself whether or not you could solve that problem for them. And if so, how? And I think all of those things, that's our homework that a lot of us do not do. We ask for advice, often, because I often get these messages. We ask for referrals. We ask for all of the solutions to lay it out for us on a silver platter. But I think the opportunity to demonstrate your OSINT skills, your interviewing skills, your research skills are all right there in the approach.
Armenak, I'm going to get to you about the OSINT full part. I see Michael licking his chops over there because he loves that word, Mr. OSINT himself. Janisha, I think you brought up a good point, but like a lot of people on the call are like, I ain't got time for that. I need a job, mortgage coming due, kids need daycare. I need a job. But where I tell people is like, you're probably not going to, like, your method of being desperate and just messaging people, then what they don't realize, they message people, they don't have a job, and then they move on from that person. And that person remembers that message. So when you approach them, or when a job comes in and they go look on your profile and they say, hey, I've interacted with this person. Oh, that person asked me for a job 4 months ago, and then never followed up, never reached out, never asked what I was interested in, and kept it moving. So I think what people don't realize is that they can smell and they can see the desperateness. So it's actually better to have a long-term outlook, and as I think it will condense the amount of time it takes you to actually find the job, than having a short-term outlook, because I think that actually makes it a longer process. But one thing before we go to Armenak that you did mention is you knew a lot of things about chain analysis, about anti-human trafficking, because you were involved in a lot of associations where you were contributing your free time. Talk about what you were doing with TCAE and ATII that allowed you to have access to this information. Because I think that's important for people that aren't working. They do have 5 to 10 hours a week that they could probably immediately start contributing to some of these causes.
Yeah. Before that, a lot of people actually ask me, how do I get involved with ATII or TMIA or one of the other survivors I support? And that is also a good question, because people do want to volunteer their time, but maybe not for the right reasons. And by that, I mean, I've worked with a lot of survivor educators, leaders in the industry, and sometimes when I manage their social media, I look at their inbox and I see what kind of messages they're getting from people, from executives, from managers who want to support their initiatives. And again, they're asking all the wrong questions that candidates ask their recruiters, like, how can I help? Can you give me advice on how I can support you? Instead, if you want to solve a problem for ATII, maybe let's look up what ATII does and where can you align that one specific skill set you have to solve a very specific problem. And that's what I did to get into these organizations, and also to kind of demonstrate some sort of a thought process. I've thought about this. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but this specific thing you're doing, I know you need it done in a couple of months, and this is how I can help. And so that's what I did with Tamia when I approached her. And I was only solving a specific problem. I was offering AML training. That was, by the way, a job profile I created for myself by understanding what she may need, by anticipating her problems, because often nonprofits don't really know what might emerge in the future, especially those who need AML skills and who don't necessarily professionally specialize in AML. So it's what you said earlier, Stephen. How can you create opportunities at firms that are not necessarily crypto? It's, I think, the same concept.
I laughed a little when you said people like to volunteer, and I'm like, no, people don't like to volunteer. They like to act like they want to volunteer, but they don't actually want to do the work, which is figuring out what to volunteer. When you go to somebody and ask them how I can help, that's the first sign that they have no intentions of helping you do anything that's very effective, unfortunately. And you hit it right, and then you followed up with exactly that. Armenak, everyone needs to know how to be more OSINTful, because one thing I realize, if I'm a hiring manager or if people are approaching me, the fact that they're asking me the questions that they're asking is the #1 reason why I wouldn't want to hire them. And I think that's happening to a lot of candidates. They're asking those questions to hiring managers, and hiring managers like, are you an investigator? And you don't know, you couldn't find the answer on your own. So tell us a little bit about how because in order for people even on your team to be amazing and help you, you have to ask them the right questions. I don't think your teammates are just running around to everyone remotely on Slack and saying, hey, how can we help you? That's not the case. You're probably asking them interesting questions, showing that you've done the work. Tell me a little bit about how you're doing that, because I think people need to pick up that one skill, be more OSINTful.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Asking right questions is a very important part in general of our life. You know, what do I want out of life in general, but thinking about the job itself now. Yeah, all the job related questions, you know, your questions have to make sense somehow, and to ask the right questions, like, you know, you need to do some research, you need to look into SOPs, or if you are not even in the company yet, like, for example, what I saw is in the past, like when people interviewed for crypto jobs, some people always said, you know, I want to apply because it's the future. What does this mean? Like, you have to, like, this is not a passion. This is like, it doesn't show any kind of interest, or let's say genuine interest. So you have to be like genuinely interested in this thing. And I think it was Yasmin before that said it. So, you know, being in crypto is something that you should be passionate about. And it's not just because maybe these jobs pay you more than at a normal bank, or maybe not. But I know people for a fact, like I know people that took a pay cut to go into crypto compliance. So it's really about, you know, you have to be passionate. That's like, in my opinion, is the first rule. And in my scenario, that's what I was like. I was like really passionate about crypto because it was like literally my day-to-day thing. And even though I didn't know many things about compliance, what I did was, before my interview, I checked everything. Hey, what is a SAR? What does it even mean? Like, how is it written? How is it composed? What are money laundering typologies in crypto? Of course, a bit of things I knew already, like, but again, you have to go into detail. What is Chainalysis? I knew the name of Chainalysis. I knew that there is a software existing where they can, let's say, identify some wallet addresses, but I never used it. I never saw it. So I made research about that. And I went into, again, Google, YouTube. I looked at it. I tried to find as many things as I can. Once I was actually even lucky enough that when I was at a conference, there was a Chainalysis booth. So like I talked with them, and I have even their socks, which is like funny. So I think it's very important, again, to ask right questions at the right time. That's also another thing. And, you know, just be like really genuinely interested. And I think if you are like genuinely interested, if you are genuinely passionate about things, this will it will, like, you will just, how is it called? Like, it will shine out of you. So people will see that you're really passionate about it.
I think that's the beauty of it, is that you don't have to fake it during the interview process. You can tell. I think one of I interviewed somebody, and I was like, what have you done to learn more about cryptocurrency and compliance over the last year? And they said, honestly, I haven't done anything because I've been too busy on Discords and Telegrams trying to figure out more on how to buy and sell NFTs. You can't fake an answer like that, because anyone that's been in NFTs knows how time consuming it is to be on Discords and Telegrams. So I think that's one thing. One thing I warn people is that people can tell. I don't think you realize it. You can't fake the interviewers, because they've interviewed more people than you've interviewed that you've done interviews for. So when you say blockchain is the future, red flag right away. When you're trying to pretend to walk around how much you know about crypto when you haven't done your research, we can tell that right away. When you're trying to volunteer and not actually do the work, we can tell that right away. Because what you don't realize is that Janisha's had, or Yasmin's had 100 people reach out just like you, saying the exact same things. You think you're the only one. Trust me, you're not. And it's crushing your opportunities for no reason other than you don't want to put in a few hours of work. And I'm not saying this as a blanket statement to everybody, but I think you should know that people can smell it from a mile away. So, and you made a point about the volunteering, Janisha. I think that's such an important thing. You know, I have Ash on the call who came up to me I think it was last year, and said, hey, what can I do? I'm like, hey, we do the CCFC courses. I could use some support. Can you help me create a quiz? She did the whole quiz by herself. It probably took her, it's going to take hours. I don't know. It took me like 3 hours just to come up with 9 questions. So I can only imagine how much it took her to come up with 100 questions. And now Ash is involved in any opportunities I get. Ash is the first person I go through. Hey, Ash. And she has a full-time job. She's even here on her lunch hour. I think people don't realize it does take a little bit of amount of time, but once you commit to that time and you actually produce the work, people are always going to think of you. And to Yasmin, your point about kind of being top of mind to people, I think we have 3 minutes before we're going to kind of stop the recording. We'll have more questions. But Yasmin, to you, what about that? Armenak made an interesting point about taking a pay cut. And, Janisha's talked about, dependence and living on I think this is the one interesting thing about crypto. People aren't willing to take a pay cut to get into crypto, even though they don't realize 1 or 2 years of experience in crypto will probably pay them a lot more than they're making right now in the traditional. Talk about maybe pay cuts, living underneath your means. What are your thoughts about that?
Anyone, even before crypto was a thing, if anyone trying to make a career change, you always went either a lateral move or took a pay cut to make that career shift. I don't think anyone that had a career of like 20 plus years will tell you that they've never had to do that in their life. If you really want to change into crypto, you can make that pay cut temporarily. And like I said before, your employer is most likely going to encourage your growth within the company. And if they're not the type of culture that would do that, maybe they're not right for you long term. But I don't see a problem with you getting a pay cut to change your career. I think it's worth it. I think if you're really passionate about the industry, it's something you have to invest in, and think of it more as an investment. And in terms of putting the extra hours in, if you actually are truly, genuinely, become passionate about it. Work is a lot more enjoyable when you immerse yourself and you become truly passionate about it. And then you won't have to fake trying to be genuine in interviews. You won't have to fake any of that because it'll come so naturally and you'll enjoy your life more.
Love it. I think anyone that's on the call right now that is unemployed, I say take the next week, boot. Don't even punt it. Don't even try to send out a resume. Don't apply to anything. Spend the next 40 hours learning. Everyone's coming up with their crypto crime report. Everyone's coming up with some kind of documentation. I think it's Solidus Labs or Sargeant has a report on rug pulls. Everyone has a report. Spend the next 40 hours that you would in a normal job, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, and go learn and completely punt looking for a job. I guarantee after those 40 hours, you will be so better suited to be in the industry. You'll be able to move past most of the other candidates that you're competing with because you'll be so up to date with exactly what the problems are in the industry. And it's hard for people to do that because they want to spend 2 hours updating their cover letter with all the keywords from the job description. I get it. I've been there. They want to, apply to every single job, and then they're confused about why they're not getting any job. The best thing to do is what Janisha said, find out the places you want to work for first, and then start applying to the jobs. Ash, I think you have to head out. So
Elizabeth asked, how can I add a skill to my resume if I only have researched it online, but have never used it at work? To rephrase, Elizabeth, you're asking, how could I demonstrate, right, that I know something and not just say that I know something? How do I show and not tell? Yes. So there is a lot of advice, but for the analytical left-brained people, I'd like to maybe give you some specifics. How do you demonstrate, which is how do you create proof of concept? So to use an analogy, I'm a dancer, and in some dance forms, for example, Kizomba, there are more women than there are men. So on the dance floor, when you're trying to social dance, women often find themselves waiting for a partner to dance with. So how do you change the whole conversation and get yourselves more dancing opportunities? Now, one might say you just take control and you start targeting male dancers or lead dancers to dance with. One might say you just, become the best dancer you could be so more people will ask you. All of these answers are viable solutions, even in our case. But I think there's a third solution, which is what I've been trying to implement, which is you take on the role, you learn the skills of a lead, then you can dance with partners, like followers of any gender, right? So now you can also lead and you can follow. So you've diversified your portfolio, right? You have more versatile skills. Now, if you are going from fraud to AML, crypto AML, there is definitely a gap. There's a skills gap. So you need to create more proof of concept to prove that, hey, I can do both. I can dance as a lead and a follow. And the way I did that is by doing 3 things. One is we talked about keywords. So the more keywords you have on your LinkedIn profile that show that you could do AML for crypto, the more there is a proof of concept that you could do that. And by that, I mean, don't just use that in your description, but do these voluntary investigations, take on these courses, join these panels, even maybe create a panel discussion with a bunch of your colleagues where you can research these skills, learn these skills, and then even disseminate this information to the community. And then if you go on my LinkedIn profile, you'll see there are many recommendations that use the word AML investigations. And I didn't just get them by asking people, you know, through the same scripted approach, hey, write me a recommendation. I created a project, often by bugging Stephen and other people a lot. And I asked him to work on these projects with me. One of them was doing panel discussions on Clubhouse, for example. And then I asked for recommendations. And not everyone would have the time to write you a beautiful recommendation like Stephen did. So can you still get a recommendation? Yes, the same way you could get an informational interview. You could basically solve the problem and say, here are the things you've said about me in the past. Could you just put that on the record? And I'd love to help you with the recommendation too. I think when we ask for help, sometimes we create problems instead of solving problems. I think that's what Yasmin alluded to. So that's one way, more keywords, more recommendations. The second way is to take courses and to demonstrate that you've taken those courses. And there are so many. And the courses can be very specific, like OSINT for a specific type of investigation, or report writing, business writing. And the third way is to, I think we talked about it before, starting a project. And often when people talk about projects, so I think Khalid is here, he writes a lot of summaries and summarizes articles and reports. And I often just go to his page instead of reading a report. He has a niche there. Now, often people want to start these projects, but then they're worried that they may not get the right reception. But you know, the goal has to be clear. This project is not about getting the most likes or getting the most amount of attendees to come to your Clubhouse conversation. The goal is to demonstrate that you've solved a problem, that you've created a project because you wanted to learn and you wanted to share information. And that is one of the 3 ways you can demonstrate some skills.
I love that. I think creating anything, I always joke around about building a boat. And it's funny because my friend Marlon just created the AML Pirate, and I was featured on her episode today. So you should go check it out. And she's created all these different visual kind of cartoony animations on how money laundering is done into traditional sense. And that was kind of her thing, like a pirate ship, like that's her boat. Everyone's creating something that is theirs. And I think that's so important, is to create something that's yours. What I see a lot of is people want to join other people's projects. People want to contribute to other people. You go do the work. You create your own podcast and put it out. And whether 5 people listen or 50,000 people listen, that's your project that you're going to build off, because those are the skills you actually need to learn. And I think that's the interesting thing, is people just want to go be attracted to the projects that have already been created, to Janisha's point. So they want to work with ATII and TCAE and all these other companies, but they don't actually want to put in the work. Yasmin, talk to us a little bit about certifications, because there's been a couple of questions, people are asking what certifications to take. I'll give my biased opinion when I'm done, and I'll let Armenak speak on this too, but I'll let you go with your unbiased opinions first about what are some of the courses that you like.
We go for the most well-known ones, CAMS. There's an equivalent to CAMS that's also acceptable. CBP, Certified Bitcoin Professional, is good when you don't have experience in cryptocurrency to begin with. So if you're moving from traditional banking into crypto, that at least just shows your future employer that you have basic understanding of crypto. And chain analysis or equivalent reactors or equivalent investigations for any blockchain forensics tools, but chain analysis is one of the top ones we look for. But not all employers will look for it. Some employers use a different service provider. Those can be a little more expensive, but like we mentioned, there's a lot of candidates that have a lot of certifications, but if you don't want to go that route, I like Coursera. There are universities that offer blockchain programs and tailored to different things. If you don't want to go into AML, into crypto, you can get certifications on there. I personally would go for ones from universities that are known, that are well known, as opposed to some random university that no one's heard about. Yeah, CVP is the cheapest, $100, and it's kind of like a industry minimum standard.
Yeah, and our friend Heinrich put in the chat, University of Nicosia. That's kind of one of the most well-known free. I think they have a lot of free programs that they did. Armenak, are you going to say the same thing? Are you saying Chainalysis is probably the best courses?
Very similar, yes. So
yeah,
I went that route as well. Like I did the CRC, I did the CEIC. The next will be the CISC, the investigation specialist for Chainalysis. So I think it's important to have certifications. I would say for yourself, rather than just to show off that you have a certification. I think it's an important difference. I think you should do certifications in the things that you are really interested in, and not just having a certification for the sake of having a certification. For example, Chainalysis is something that I'm really passionate about, and like I literally love it. And like within that year, I progressed within my organization, like really to somehow a subject matter expert in Chainalysis. And that's also a reason why I'm in this incident response team that I mentioned in the beginning. It's just because I'm so passionate about it, because from the start on, when we had this training, I understood these typologies and everything, like when there is a change of ownership and all these things. I don't want to go too much in detail now, but it's like, I think it's just important when you're passionate about something, then you should go also for the next step. And there is always a next step. So,
and it doesn't really add value. Like, I think like, I agree with what you're saying. It doesn't really add value to accumulate a whole bunch of certifications that don't really, employers aren't going to feel like you're adding more value if you have 8 certifications that not all really, are going to provide anything extra to your resume. And it doesn't necessarily show that you have a wealth of knowledge. It's good to, like you said, like know what you want and be passionate about one thing and get the certifications relevant to that.
I love it. I love Chainalysis, and I think Cypher Chase does, but I know Chainalysis for sure you get to actually use the tool for like 30 days. So let's face it. And to be quite honest, guys, like you got to get a little hustle. You got to get a little ghetto, man. Like Chainalysis offers the courses at a certain rate, but Chainalysis has partners like Airdrop, like TCAE. If I'm a person and I got limited funds, I'm going to go to TCAE and say, hey, can you give me a 50% discount? They're going to say, no, not really. Cool. I'll go to Airdrop and ask them, Airdrop, can you give me a 50% discount? It's only a couple days left before you have to submit those names to Chainalysis. I know you have a little bit of room in your next cohort. Hook a brother up, hook a sister up. You have to be you have to know what the game is. If these partners aren't filling up their classes, Chainalysis fills up every single one of their classes that they offer, but the partners are most likely not filling up their classes. And you can see it because us partners always post everyone in our class because we want people to see how many people we had on our sessions. And when you see 15, 16 people and you realize that Chainalysis courses can probably hold about 25 or 30, there's a gap there. So you can look at all the different, when are these partners offering the courses? Hey, maybe I can reach out to Steven. He's offering a course on Saturday, this Saturday. It's Wednesday. He's probably got to get those names in by tomorrow. Maybe I can work out a deal. Maybe I can help him. And so, like, there's this, nobody's asking anymore. They just say ACAMS courses are too expensive. Boo hoo hoo. Go ask ACAMS for a discount. Go ask ACFCS for a discount. Go create something. Go create 10, 15 people that are willing to take the course with you. And I have people on the call that have done this. Go get 10, 15 people. I guarantee you'll get a discount on any partner. You have to start being a little bit more resourceful and start thinking outside of the box instead of just looking at the price tag and being like, oh, this is too expensive. I just lost my job. Think about ways that you can add benefit. I guarantee if you bring 10 people, somebody's about to give you the certificate for free. So being a little bit more resourceful, talking to more people. And I think that's one thing that our industry doesn't do enough If you want to know how much a company pays Janisha when she was at Kraken, go and ask Janisha how much she got paid. Not everyone's going to tell you, but it doesn't hurt to start asking people like, hey, what's the ranges here? What are we dealing with? One thing I noticed as a recruiter and hiring manager, people are off by about $20,000 or $30,000 going into the interview process. I'm not talking about $2,000 or $3,000. I'm talking about tens of thousands of dollars because they just don't know to ask other people in the industry, how much is this position paying? So you have to swallow your pride. You have to get comfortable talking about money, working out deals, reaching out to people and saying, hey, but you also have to commit because Chainalysis is a 16-hour course. So if it interferes with your bocce ball on Saturday, then unfortunately, like you're going to have, people aren't taking risks a lot in this industry too. They're not willing to sacrifice. And that's one thing I saw Janisha do. She took the CCFC course and the CRC course as they overlapped. So she hadn't even finished her CCFC, hadn't even finished the fundamentals, and now she's taking the Reactor course. She sacrificed a lot of hours probably while she's working to try and learn and catch up with the rest of her students. I'm not seeing enough people taking any sacrifices. Everyone's, oh, I have a birthday that day, can't do the courses. Okay, then that's fine. But the 40 other people that already have those courses are just going to zoom by you in the interview process. So let's go to some questions here in the chat. Somebody, maybe Armenak, maybe you can help us. Somebody wants to start out in crypto, assuming compliance, part-time. How do they look to get their first job maybe on a part-time basis, which is kind of tricky. It's like being a part-time real estate agent. Like you can be part-time, but how good is that?
Yeah, I have to say, I think part-time in crypto itself, getting a part-time or a contract job in general, I think is not so hard. But again, it depends on the direction or in the field that you're in. I think in compliance, it could be a bit trickier because of course, most of the companies, they look for a person that is always with them. But I heard like in different regions of the world that there are some companies that they also, let's say, do like contract-based works, and they just, they just make agreements that have a limited time frame, and that's it. But again, even for that, somehow you have to be so-called expert. I mean, I don't like this word expert that much, but somehow you have to know what you're speaking about. So yeah, I think getting into crypto in a crypto job as part-time is a bit hard. I think it's a bit easier on the NFT front because there are, as you mentioned before, Discord, like there are so many opportunities where you can just go in as a moderator for some NFT project where you literally just exchange messages with the community. And I think there is a lot of value in that, although there's a lot of, let's say, shit posting and everything, sorry for the word, but it's also, I think there is some content where like somebody just posts something and you like get interested and say, hey, let me see what this is and let me like research that. What is this actually? What is this guy even speaking about? So I think this could be valuable, but again, like I think it's a bit hard to get like compliance jobs part-time in crypto. Like, sorry, that doesn't really answer that question.
Customer support is a lot easier, and I think customer support, a lot of it is part-time, and you don't have to go into customer support having already been like being a crypto expert. You can just have customer support background in any kind of back office role, telecommunications, whatever. Coming in with some experience in something, and then have like doing your CBP or showing that you have a true interest in crypto somehow, that's probably going to land you at some point eventually a part-time customer support role at a big crypto exchange.
I agree. And it's hard in compliance. They don't want to give it's so much work to onboard you to do it part-time. It's most likely not worth it unless like you have the full-time capacity and you're just taking part-time as maybe like almost like a pay downgrade, or you just say, I need work. It's hard to do it if you're just like, hey, I work at a bank and I want to do this part-time. It's probably not going to happen as much. Janisha, question from our friend Naja Gordon. How should a person respond to ghosting after a first interview? What sort of follow-up should be made to continue a connection when you aren't getting a response? Is it even worth keeping the connection if you're being ghosted? I have my thoughts. I'll let you go first there.
I think the first thing is to focus on our own narrative. Is this ghosting? I used to feel that way years ago, and I think this has been a maturing process in my mind, to consider the humanness, right? The humanity of the person receiving our messages. So Yasmin is the only person right now among us who is a victim of all of our messages. And I always try to remember there are so many people like myself. But the other thing is, have I done enough work to qualify the company and qualify myself? And if I have, then maybe this is not meant to be at this time, right? Because this is not like a magic formula. There are so many other factors, and one of them is the experience of the person on the other end, or the timing, and maybe the timing isn't right. And Yasmin even said she is more receptive to people who have asked the same questions over time. I only do that when I feel genuinely connected with a company, and it's on like one of my top 5 companies. I would only reach out again then. But ultimately, I only think about now, which is, have I prepared enough? Have I honored the person, their time, their profile, their history enough to learn everything about them before I reached out? I don't ask what happens when I don't receive the outcome that I expected. I'm only focused on what they call karma, which is action. And that helps because, you know, these individuals are simply humans who have a need, and maybe they don't have a need for someone like you or I at the moment. The part-time question, could I just quickly address that?
Yeah.
So if part-time is your criterion, I think it might be possible to create your own job in the long run. And I was thinking of account verification, individuals with client support who look at KYC documents and onboarding and so on. And this is like a very specific niche, and maybe you can market yourself as a virtual compliance person who offers part-time services. And I think that the gist of all of this is that maybe when we start looking at ourselves as service providers and not people looking to be hired, then we are able to come up with very specific solutions that address both our problems and their problems.
And then you can reach out to places like Jumio, who are offering, there are vendors offering the services, because I'm sure and say, hey, listen, can I learn how to use your tool? I'll give you feedback. And then you become an expert on the tool. You can even help them build a training program similar to how Chainalysis and other companies did. And then when companies are like, hey, we know how to use your tool, but now we need people that can actually use your tool to hire them, Jumio and Comply Advantage might be a place where you can kind of sit there as like almost like an a la carte service for them, where now they can kind of ship you in 3 months, 6 months opportunities. But to Janisha's point, you'd have to think completely different. And I think this is where mindset comes in. That's not a regular thought process for most people. Most people are going on LinkedIn looking for a job, and that's it. You have to kind of create something that you want, and then once you start the process, you'll know about, oh, okay, like I can do this, I can reach out to this person. Back to ghosting. I have a lot of points about ghosting. It's crypto, get used to it. It's you know, it's a lot of hurry up and wait, like, hey, come here. It's like working in show business, right? Come here, and then staying there for 10 hours until you're being called. So there's no such thing really as ghosting. I've heard with Binance, they've ignored people for 3-4 months and then gone in touch with them, and they've been hired within 2 weeks. So I think we have to get rid of this notion of ghosting. And to whoever, I can't see the name right now, someone said, well, you know, what if they reach me on LinkedIn and then they ghost me? I've been so many ghosted. I think you have to start taking account of yourself. How do recruiters reach out to the best professionals in the world? And I know Armenak has the benefit of sitting beside one of the best recruiters right now, but are they reaching out to you as if you're the best professional in the world? Or are they giving you a template message on LinkedIn that says, hey, person, we looked at your profile. We didn't highlight any specific skills you have, but we're saying that you might be perfect for a role that we can't give you any information about. That's not how you're going to approach me. I'm not responding to those messages. But if you respond to the message, then you're kind of, not that you deserve what you get, but you are allowing yourself to be approached by somebody that hasn't thought out your unique skills. They haven't addressed you properly. They haven't reached out to you properly. So my guidance there is stop responding to every single recruiter that just sends you any vague templated copy and paste message, because then that kind of shows by you responding to it, they've already kind of categorized you on how they have to treat you. And I know not everyone's going to tell you that, but that's the reality of it is. Similar to dating, right? If you're the drunk person in the club, just talking to every single girl, like if the girl says, hey, like, yeah, I'll hang out with you more, well, then you kind of put yourself in this situation. You can't be mad that they're kind of drunk and throwing up by the end of the night. So those are my thoughts on that. We have about 10 more minutes. I would love to, if I miss any questions, interview. Yasmin, I'm curious about your thought process, or even Armenak can answer this. How do you what is the best follow-up method? So they have an interview with Yasmin, they're feeling good about themselves. Should they be following up the next day by sending you a thank you note, maybe with a presentation or something that they've created, kind of saying thank you? And by the way, I think ABC skills are going to be perfect for this job. What do you expect? Not like what is right or what is wrong, but what do you expect that makes you feel good? And if they didn't do it, you'd be like, that's kind of like not kind of my style. I need some kind of contact after the interview.
I never expect it, and I never have, and not doing it won't make me have negative feelings towards you. But if you do it, you're more likely gonna get my attention if you didn't already. And I think following up every day, that's there's like those soft etiquette skills, like don't follow up every day or expect that the next day you're going to get a response. If you're giving me a few business days, then you follow up, or even a week, then I think that's a good follow-up timeline.
Awesome. Armenak, how about you? For what you see, I don't know if you're not part of the hiring process, or maybe just whisper to your friend beside you, what's like the best method for following up nowadays when recruiters are just getting bombarded with applicants?
I think, first of all, before ending the call, I think it's always good to have clear communication. So, if somebody says, I will reach out, okay, when can I expect a response? That's, I think, it's a very specific question, and it will make the person in front of you already think about, hey, okay, how will I actually reach out to this person if it's successful? If not, about this ghosting thing, I have a bit of a different opinion than the audience in general. So I do think that recruiters in general should give more feedback to people and should be more transparent, even if it's a no. I think it's important for people to know that it's a no, rather than like not knowing anything at all. I think it's just about, I don't know, like mutual respect somehow. If you give the person the time already that you speak to them, even if you are a recruiter and if you have to recruit many people, I understand that you're busy, but in the end, like a template that you have and say, hey, no, sorry, currently you will not be hired, I think it's not too much to ask. I think recruiters in general should like change their approach a bit in that sense. Yeah, so sorry, now I just lost my line of thoughts. What was the question again? Sorry to come back.
It's okay.
I will follow up and give feedback to anyone that I'm talking to on LinkedIn, and anyone that we've interviewed. 100% get feedback. But if it's just a resume application, I feel really bad about it, and I feel it would be a lot more respectful. But like I really wish our like HR system was able to do it in a mass way, because I can't go into 150 applications as much as I would love to do that, because I've been in their position before. I can't go into those and one by one send emails from my Gmail account.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's like an apology for me to everyone that has to go through that. But
yeah, sure.
Recruiters are busy though. As a recruiter, we don't have the capacity to respond to every single person that didn't make it through maybe if they made it through the interview process, like maybe you're doing 10 interviews, like I can see recruiters responding. But if like you applied and didn't get a call back and didn't get an interview, like you're just gonna have to suck that one up as like, hey, I just didn't get an interview. To expect the recruiters to respond to you is going to be almost impossible. It's not really going to happen. And I used to say the same thing, like recruiters aren't doing enough, but to be quite honest, there's no time. There's just absolutely no time.
I totally get what you're saying, and to some degree, I agree. I mean, of course, if you just apply and you never had a personal interaction, okay, it's fine. But if you had an interview, I think it's another story.
Yeah, I agree. We have a question from Khaled. What's the outlook for 2023? I'm going to give my thoughts and then I'll hand it over to each of you and we can maybe kind of use that one to close out the session. Hopefully we'll be back in 2 weeks. This is a lot to organize, but hopefully we'll be back in another 2 weeks so we can always provide. I'm hoping to get recruiters from some places like Chainalysis and other hiring managers and recruiters to come on these sessions from companies that are actually hiring. My thoughts on 2023, although there's been a ton of penalties. Coinbase one is actually interesting because they focused on, not having enough training there. My thoughts is they're just going to make people work a lot more. I don't think you're going to see them hiring a lot more compliance professionals with these penalties. Unfortunately, they're just going to work Armenak and Yasmin and others to the bone right now during these tough times because I think, maybe not specifically you guys, but people are scared to lose their jobs. So if you have to take on a little extra work to keep your job, that's what you're going to do. I think the industry will bounce back within the next 2 years. My thought process is if you can get into a crypto exchange or anywhere cheap right now, even if you have to take a pay cut, get in there now because these 2 years are going to be kind of quiet. There's not going to be a lot of movement. You can get 2 years of experience and start doing your work. Like stop waiting for the jobs to come up on LinkedIn. Go search crypto companies around the world. And to Janisha's point, go figure out which companies. When you see a company get funding, go to that company and see what are the jobs available. If they get capital, that means they're going to deploy that capital usually in personnel. We have to do a little bit more research. We can't just wait for the jobs to hit LinkedIn. If you're waiting on a job that's already hit LinkedIn, you're too late, in my opinion. And like Yasmin posted a job. She probably got hundreds of applicants. But what I did for Yasmin is I just created a spreadsheet. I created a Google form, easy Google form. People could have filled out. I created a spreadsheet and then I just organized them based on the people that I knew that I thought would be perfect for that job and gave them over to Yasmin. That probably cut down Yasmin's time by a huge amount. Did I get paid to do that? Of course not. Will I do that for free? Of course, because I'm here to add value to the industry the best ways I know how to. And I think that's what people have to start thinking is not how can I get a job? How can I start making people like recruiters' job easier? That spreadsheet can now be used to anyone that has a job. If they don't want to hire me for recruiting services, I was like, cool, I got Michael, I got this person, I got 10 people that would be perfect for this job. I have the spreadsheet ready to go at any point. We have to start being more creative. To be quite honest, the industry itself is getting a little bit selfish. Everyone's worrying about me. How do I get the job? How do I get the pay increase? How do I get to the interview? I think we need to start worrying about, hey, what can we do to benefit the industry? People will come find you that way. People like Yasmin will come say, hey, I see what you're doing here. I'm interested. And hey, if you can put 35 people on the call and they're all top-notch investigators looking for a call, Yasmin's able to join this call, kind of see some of the thoughtful questions, cross-reference that with the list that she has and the applicants. And I think she feels a lot more connected to certain people here, whether or not they'd be a perfect fit for Tether. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Yasmin, we'll go to you. Janisha and then Armenak, you'll finish us off.
Yeah, so regulations are tightening up and that usually means more hiring and compliance, but it's a cost center. And if a company just got hit with fines or got hit with the market downturn, they're not going to hire a cost center. They're more likely to keep more of the sales and business development guys, the guys that bring in the money, and shrink their cost center and just work them really hard. But I think it's going to be a slow recovery and compliance isn't going anywhere. Regulations are getting more strict, there's more regulatory uncertainty, I think, coming up and this year than there was maybe 2 years ago when things started looking better. So it's not going to go anywhere. I think what Stephen Sargeant said is perfect. Get your foot in the door, even if it's not your ideal position. And by the time that the mass hiring comes, you'll be more prepared and you'll have crypto experience coming into it.
I agree. Stop looking for like the Coinbases and Krakens of the world. Go to Latin America, where barely any of those probably institutions, much less the regulators, have access to all the tools like Chainalysis, where you can, it's an emerging market. Go look at the Chainalysis Global Adoption Report, see where the emerging markets are, Africa, Latin America, and go start figuring out which exchanges work there, and start reaching out to them instead of going to where everyone else is going. Janisha?
Nothing nothing new to add other than maybe a thought process. Every time the supply exceeds demand, the first thing that happens is that prices drop. So our market value has significantly dropped, and it might continue to be so for the foreseeable number of months. But as Yasmin said, the regulations are getting more stringent, which means there will be more of a need in this landscape. And then there is also the geographies, but also industries. It doesn't have to be crypto, right? We don't always have to be so rigid. Fintechs are booming in Africa, especially where there is massive adoption. Stable coins are doing really well in Central America, and there is a lot of adoption in East Asia. So we can only anticipate stable coins will be doing much better. So these are just some arenas to explore.
I love that. The thought process is important because I don't think a lot of people are actually thinking, they're just applying. And I think the best thing to do when you lose your job is kind of step back and say, like, what do I want? And then work backwards from there. What do I want? And just because the market prices go down doesn't mean your value has gone down. Similarly, when market prices go up and you haven't really changed how much value you're adding, keep that in mind. Because there was a lot of people at the start of last year that they let their egos get a hold of them when they were doing negotiations because they were paying investigators so much money. And those people got let go, and they have to now reach back out to those same recruiters that they were giving a hard time to find a job. People remember, just I know they shouldn't, they should be unbiased, but just like as you talked about a relationship and heartbroken, people remember who did them wrong or broke their heart. So keep that in mind. The industry is very, very small. So although your ego goes up when your price goes up, just remember this is a very turbulent market. You have to be careful of how you treat people, because those are the same people that you're going to need to reach back out to when the industry goes flat. So I know a lot of people are acting, crazy because they work for FTX and everything else. But when something like that happens, now you have to face back that same industry that you're kind of poo-pooing on before. Armenak, any last thoughts?
I think it's important to be more deeper in research. Let's say I saw a comment right now, check out jurisdictions that are now implementing crypto regulations. I think that's a very good approach. Also, like what kind of big players or big companies are implementing crypto in general, like either it's like big institutions, or what I could suggest is also maybe go into VC websites and look at their portfolio of companies. Maybe there are some openings as well, although mostly they are like developer positions, but still there might be some roles that are for compliance as well. I mean, there is like the GOAT Finance is like in the room, like finance is hiring as well. Like there are still many companies. It's not, of course, it's not like in the bull run, that's clear, but like there are companies that are still hiring, and it's really a lot of work, a lot of research, and also like not for the short term, but thinking like longer term. I think now is the best time to acquire the right skills, or let's say, or to add on top of the skills that you already have, because most of the people here are already somehow in the crypto space and know what they're talking about or like doing. So I think it's a good time to, let's say, just invest more time in specific topics and like really get more knowledge in specific topics. Yeah, I said it a couple of times, like specific topics.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen, guys.
Yeah.
Just to kind of let you guys know what we're working on here at Airdropped. Obviously, this is an event. The mystery guest was Armenak. So for everyone that was wondering, we will be starting our CCFC course as of Saturday. Registration ends tomorrow, I believe Thursday. We do the CRC course. We do also one-on-one interview prep, which I think has been the best investment most people have made, because I just think people don't realize like how they do in interviews. So we do mock interviews, and this is not just for people to purchase. This is like, hey, if you're Yasmin or Janisha and you're like, hey, I want to start something just like this, reach out to me. I'll give you guys the blueprint on how you can create things just like this, because I see the value of being able to talk to people that are in the industry. And it's not just about the money. It's about really adding value. And then more importantly, get involved. One last thing I would say is like show up wherever you are. I noticed that Michael and Nadenza, out of like 30 people, are the only people on camera. And I hope I pronounced your name right, Nadenza. But show up. This is your chance. There's hiring managers. Every session I do, there's always somebody that's looking to hire, but they're not going to have a big sign that says I'm hiring like they do on LinkedIn. Show up. I know it's tough to be on camera for an hour and a half. I know you want to be looking at your phone for part of the conversation, or you might have children in the background, but showing up on camera already puts you in a position that I can only see 6 people on camera, and those are the 2 people I see the whole time, and those are probably the same 2 people that our organizers see. Doesn't have to be this event. Everywhere you go, show up on camera, have thoughtful questions, prepare as Armenak just said, prepare yourself. And I know that's hard. Not everybody can do it. I completely understand. Not everyone can show up on camera. Trust me, when my kids are bouncing off the walls. But like Michael had a cat on his head for like 3 minutes. Like I think we can all be comfortable now that we've been in the pandemic for a couple of years, that it's just gonna happen in the background. You know, kids are gonna be pulling us, things are gonna happen. Trust me, everyone has to just change their perspective. I think one thing that across the board is change the way you approach things. It's not that the industry is bad or the economy is bad. Yeah, there might be less jobs. And if you're, now you've been getting into the industry, you're like, I don't want to apply. There's all these qualified people. Yes, but a lot of those qualified people are actually desperate to get a job because they have things like mortgages and things to pay. So you can actually go in now and, to Armenak's point, get educated, change your approach to people. So now you know how to approach people like Yasmin. It isn't just running there and say, hey, Yasmin, I know you're hiring. Can you put my name on the top of the list? Or, hey, Janisha, you worked at Kraken. Can you refer my brother or sister? Like these are the actual conversations I'm seeing in my LinkedIn messages. So as funny as they sound, these are actually happening. So that's my advice. I'm going to guarantee almost that we'll be either back next Wednesday or the following Wednesday to keep up these discussions. If you want to be on the panel, come out. This is just a place where we can learn, but more importantly, where we can give you guys the real truth about what's happening in the industry. We don't have to be polished here. And as I said, I think one of the things is be a little bit more resourceful. If you're applying for AML investigations, you should have very few questions. And the questions should be around how that company does certain things. You already know how it's done, but how that company's approaches certain things like OFACs or sanctions, like those, they should be meaningful questions. 30 hours worth of research, even if you did 10, I think you would be okay. But for every hour, I think it's at least another $1,000 on your paycheck. I could be wrong. But I think to Yasmin's point is like when those people check off the boxes, those 5%, I'm assuming, can ask for a little bit more than the other 95% that are coming in and in the interview process. Is that a fair statement?
100%. Yeah.
It's really exactly. And as Yasmin said, it's not all to do with subject matter expertise, certifications, or work experience. A lot of it is to do with things that you can control, simply preparing better, approach better. And I think Janisha and me eventually, I know we threw this one together pretty last minute, but Janisha and me will try and come up with some kind of workshop to help professionals kind of go outside of the normal ways of approaching professionals, because I really think that's a difference maker, and having people that can vouch for you. So when I was looking for somebody, I'd reached out to Armenak's friend who said, hey, like, this is the person I think you should have on the panel. And a couple of people are like, yeah, this person was able to get into compliance really, really quickly. So having people that can vouch for how good you are, that's really the game changer. I appreciate all of you. This is an hour and a half. I'll make sure everyone gets recordings. I appreciate the panelists who are like, within a minute, like a lot of these people, I asked them last week, Thursday, like, hey, can you do something Wednesday? I'm promoting this on Friday. And there was very little resistance. They made themselves available. Armenak, probably on like 24 hours notice, jumped in. And I really do appreciate that. Because I think even if we help 2 or 3 people on this call, they will then go and help others as we get through this. Remember, the market's not bad. The market isn't good. The market is what it is. It's your mindset that has to change towards the market. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate the panelists so much, and hopefully to see you guys in the next couple of weeks. and share this on LinkedIn because this was a pretty badass conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.